Volkswagen gets caught using slave labor. Chinese companies suck up U.S. tax dollars, and California's governor does something disgusting. And more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more at the end. Well, there's a new twist to a story I told you about last week. Lawmakers in Washington have been weighing a blacklist for firms lobbying for Chinese military-linked companies. And this is what I said at the time. All we need now is for the U.S. Congress to pass a law preventing themselves from letting Chinese companies help them raise money to get reelected. So I won't hold my breath. But if Congress does somehow pass it, it will restore my faith in humanity. Well, before Congress could even vote on the bill, lobbyists began dumping their Chinese clients anyway, just based on the threat that they could be blacklisted. So Congress didn't even have to pass the law to get the result they wanted, which is great, but technically it doesn't restore my faith in humanity. Speaking of Washington, Senator Marco Rubio is urging the SEC, the U.S. stock market regulator, to block the IPO of the major Chinese fashion retailer Shein. Rubio wrote that Shein's recent decision to request approval from Beijing for a prospective U.S. IPO raises serious doubts about the accuracy of the company's filings. Fraud is a major problem among Chinese companies. Well, it's a problem for everyone, but fraud is actually the #1 export of Chinese companies. So for them, it's working as intended. Just one example. In 2020, it was discovered that Luckin Coffee, the Chinese Starbucks knockoff, committed sales fraud to the tune of $300 million. As soon as it came out, their stocks collapsed, meaning Luckin cheated U.S. investors out of their money. So it makes sense that Senator Rubio is concerned that there could also be fraud with Shein. It also makes sense that Shein, amid the U.S. resistance to its listing, is now considering doing their IPO in London instead. Problem solved. For Shein, foreign investors might still want to exercise a bit of caution. Speaking of great investors, the U.S. Congress. The U.S. congressional delegation led by Representative Mike Gallagher visited Taiwan to boost ties. Gallagher is the chairman of Congress's Select Committee on the CCP. He said that by promoting deeper ties between our leaders and our economies, we can enhance peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, which is great. But while Congress is showing support for Taiwan, Wall Street is still trying to bolster ties with China. The same week as Gallagher's Taiwan visit, the CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce visited China to meet officials and business leaders there. The Chamber of Commerce is a lobbying group that represents U.S. companies. The Chinese premier met with them and afterwards said that based on the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, China is ready to work with the United States, which is code for Wall Street, please keep giving us your money. If there's cash involved, China can definitely overlook the U.S. bad-mouthing them. And for Chinese money, Wall Street can overlook human rights abuses. Yep. That sounds like win-win cooperation to me. Speaking of human rights abuses, Volkswagen is under pressure to ditch its China joint venture as the U.S. impounds some of its vehicles. Why? Because their cars contained a part made by a Chinese supplier that's on a sanctions list for using forced labor in Xinjiang. And here I thought the slug bug guess what color game was the most abusive thing about Volkswagen. This is pretty shocking. So, what did Volkswagen have to say about it? One tiny part, said the spokesman. We really tried, but this shows how challenging it is to really know everything that is happening in complex supply chains. No, I'm calling BS on this one. First of all, they're talking about forced labor like it's peanut dust. We try really hard to keep it out of the product, but we gotta warn you that some might have accidentally just floated on in. Second, if they were really trying, they would have already pulled their factory out of Xinjiang, which is where the CCP is putting ethnic minorities in concentration camps. But I guess Volkswagen is okay with concentration camps, which is not all that surprising since Volkswagen was founded by an actual Nazi. That's right, this guy right here, the one showing off his model VW Bug, who doesn't even have the decency to yell "slugbug" and "deck Hitler." And after the break, you won't believe how much U.S. taxpayer money is going to Chinese companies. Welcome back. A couple years ago, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. It was designed to fund clean energy projects and move the supply chains for those projects back to the United States. But it turns out it's also a major gift to China. Experts warn Beijing could plunder more than $100 billion from U.S. taxpayers under the act. Why? Because plundering is what the P in CCP actually stands for. You see, the scheme offers uncapped tax credits to firms investing in green energy, but does not block foreign companies from accessing the money. Wow, that's quite an oversight. According to the Daily Mail, there's already $10 billion of Chinese-backed solar and EV projects across the U.S., and more could be on the way. So China is getting around U.S. sanctions on imports by just setting up factories in the U.S., which means the employees will be Americans, in theory anyway. But the profits from these taxpayer-funded green energy companies then go to China. When the law was written, it should have required the money only go to companies owned by Americans. Whoopsie. That loophole probably won't be easy to change, especially since the world's biggest solar company is lobbying the West not to cut out Chinese suppliers. That company is LONGi Green Energy Technology. Their vice president made the not at all threatening observation that the cost of solar panels produced without Chinese involvement in countries like the U.S. would be double. Yeah, people in the U.S. wouldn't want to pay double, right? I mean double. That's almost twice as much. There's just one downside to maintaining Chinese involvement. LONGi, the world's largest solar manufacturer, uses forced labor in Xinjiang. Oops. Looks like more of that forced labor just accidentally floated in. It's so hard to keep track of. But hey, it's to fight climate change. Won't somebody please think of the climate change? Well, you know who's not thinking of the climate change? China, the world's biggest polluter. In news that surprises no one, a new report finds China is at risk of missing their climate targets again. They had pledged to reduce carbon intensity by 18% from 2020 to 2025. Carbon intensity is CO2 emissions per unit of GDP. But they're not even trying to meet their target. In just 2 years, China has approved 218 gigawatts of new coal power, enough to supply electricity to the whole of Brazil. That's like promising you're going to quit smoking, then going out and buying an entire tobacco farm. You'd have to be a complete idiot at this point to believe China's climate pledges. Specifically this idiot. California Governor Gavin Newsom is the guy who last year met with China's dictator to partner on his climate agenda. Well, I can tell you his trip achieved absolutely nothing for the environment. Actually, it was a negative achievement since the round-trip flights were extra pollution. That's bad enough, but it gets worse. So much worse. Because this week, his office announced that giant pandas from China are set to return to the San Diego Zoo in California. And since Xi Jinping is known for being stingy with his pandas, that means Newsom promised something pretty tasty in return. And to think, just a couple of months ago, the United States was this close to being panda-free. Sounds like this idiot is running for president of the I Heart Chinese Bears Club. And after the break, the former head of a Chinese state-owned bank gets nailed for massive corruption. Welcome back. In a dramatic move that won't actually accomplish anything, China's central bank has slashed the long-term loan prime interest rate. It's the rate that affects mortgages. The idea is that this will make it cheaper to buy homes and therefore boosts the property market. But the problem isn't simply that people can't afford new loans. The problem is that the entire market is collapsing and people don't want to buy houses, no matter how cheap the loans are. This is like a restaurant finding out all its chicken is rotten, and instead of tossing it, they offer 2-for-1 nuggets. That's not how you get solvency, it's how you get salmonella. You know, you're supposed to need to be good at math to go into banking, so you'd think bankers would be better at solving problems. And they are. But the problem is how to get more money for yourself. And you're this guy, the former head of the state-owned Bank of China. He was great at it, until he was indicted for bribery as part of Xi Jinping's anti-corruption drive. He's been charged with helping others with loans and personal appointments in return for property and cash. But since he was targeted as part of the anti-corruption drive, it probably also means he's got on Xi Jinping's bad side. Maybe he didn't offer him any honey with his tea. More than 100 Tibetans were arrested over a dam protest in February. Authorities had proposed building a new hydropower station in Sichuan province. The higher water levels would destroy 6 Tibetan Buddhist monasteries in the region, including murals that date back to the 13th century. Many ethnic Tibetans, including monks, took to the streets. It was a rare act of defiance, and of course, they were crushed. Because of course China doesn't care about things that happened all the way back in the 13th century. They don't even teach history about things that happened from April to June of 1989, when absolutely nothing happened at all. Now I have a video I want to show you, so stay tuned. But first, speaking of freedom, one way to protect yourself against government tyranny, whether you're in Hong Kong or just about anywhere, is to keep your internet activity private by using a VPN. That's why I recommend you use Surfshark. When you go online, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your government. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries, more than any other VPN. That makes your connection faster and more reliable. Plus, Surfshark has top-of-the-line encryption and a no-logs policy, meaning they don't collect your browsing data. That's why Surfshark was rated Editor's Choice for the best VPN for privacy and security by PC Mag. So check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. Try it out now. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored to get up to 3 additional months for free. That's surfshark.com/uncensored and use the code UNCENSORED. The link is in the description below. And in my ongoing attempts to talk about all the things YouTube considers too controversial by hiding it in gaming content, I'm talking about the new Final Fantasy VII remake that just came out and what it has to do with the Red Pill movement. Are you Team Tifa or Team Aerith? Check it out and let me know what you think. And click that orange button to support the show on Patreon. Remember, even $1 a month makes a huge difference. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.